and fire cracked at the gates as he pushed open the door. But it was serene.
Golden Light is a title I've previously discussed on my channel, although briefly in my PS1 video. This is a video game that is basically the definition of insanity, and today I'd like to analyze it, dissect it, and explain the entirety of the lore surrounding it. As such, I'm going to build a compelling case for why it's a game worthy of your attention, while also pointing out other aspects of it. Before going into its story, however, I'm going to quickly go through a brief explanation of what the game is. Golden Light is a first-person shooter reverse prop hunt survival roguelike horror game developed by Mr. Pink and his team. It's also one of the many games that is highly inspired by Silent Hill, having its eccentric aesthetic portrayed the brutal realism of that series. Through the strange environments of Golden Light, we see a sense of familiarity that is also present in Silent Hill's strange nightmare sequences. Heck, I'd argue that even lore-wise this game shows more stark similarities to Silent Hill 2. I'll probably contrast them better when I get to the specific part of the video. What I want to focus on now is who made this game and what led to the artistic decisions that got taken. I'm going to start by describing who Mr. Pink is first. Mr. Pink, despite the name, is not a single person. It's actually two really talented Russian dudes that started working on games in the beginning of 2020. Golden Light was their debut that started the whole companionship and probably extended team as a result. But it was far from their first game, and their catalog boasts a plethora of unusual titles. This, however, may remain a topic for another video, as I'll try to focus as much on this game as possibly as I can. While exploring old versions of the game itself might show radically different mechanics or features like a flashlight, which I really miss. Jesus Christ, this game is so tough. At its core, the main gameplay loop is like a traditional roguelike where your scope is to reach the lowest floor and achieve one of multiple endings. This all takes place in a giant dungeon made out of living meat named the Gut. Along the way, you may find a variety of items in the form of consumables that have randomized effects similar to the pills of the Binding of Isaac. This can range from seriously hurting the player to healing them or repairing their items. There are also upgrades which take the form of Polaroids. Each one you pick up offers a choice between two different abilities, most of which have an upside and a downside. The fun part about the perks of this game, better known as mementos, is they serve both as a storytelling device, being the lost memories of the people that ended up losing themselves inside the gut, or even the protagonist, while also being neat little references to pop culture and other media. There's one that's a reference to Pulp Fiction, one to The Shining, and even a few video game related ones like Max Payne, one that literally allows you to use the ability from those games. There are also ways to turn these temporary upgrades into permanent ones using golden syringes, or removing them by literally giving yourself a lobotomy. Adding upon all that is a giant roster of enemies, bosses and weapons with unique abilities and a morality system akin to something like Dishonored, although this one appears more static, even if it is affected by the damage dealt to the creatures and the killings you commit. By that I mean, while it may increase the overall aggressiveness the creatures have towards you and number of enemies, it won't introduce any new threats unless you push it to the extreme, and it's quite finicky in the way that you can go back to zero by donating money to a golden tree inside the eternal field. The main gameplay loop is split between two places, and that is this field I've mentioned, the eternal field, and the gut. I'll go deeper into that, but I like to keep it for the part of the video where I detail every single level. Actually, let's do that now. Let's rewind it all the way back to the beginning. How does Golden Light start?
The sun never sets, silly. The sun shines on Earth all the time, even when it's hidden behind the horizon. So, the day and night are bound together forever. They cannot be without each other. I wonder how that must be. To be forever together, but always apart.
In the ethereal glow of golden light, you bear witness to a heart-wrenching scene as your beloved is snatched away before your eyes, dragged down into what can only be described as the depths of hell. This occurrence draws striking parallels to Dante Alighieri's renowned work, the Divine Comedy, albeit in a more metaphysical sense rather than a literal one. Both Dante and the protagonist of Golden Light suffer the loss of their cherished partners who are imprisoned within hell, and both find themselves accompanied by unlikely guides. In the case of Dante, the poet is led through the underworld by the wise Virgil, making sure he stays sane on his journey while giving exposition and context to each place they traverse. In their journey, they see the souls of tortured ones hiding, repenting, or suffering endlessly as they contrast it with Dante's unwavering wish to find his loved one. In stark contrast, the voice of reason in Golden Light takes on a different form, an otherworldly, all-knowing entity that actively endeavors to deceive the player into succumbing to death. The stark juxtaposition creates two opposing forces that complement and reflect one another within the narrative context. As such, we are presented with two equal factors and two opposite factors, representing each other in a contextual manner. My point here may appear misleading or disingenuous, but keep this in mind. I am about to essentially disassemble the entirety of the game's lore and meaning, and in order to do that, there needs to be some leeway into speculation while also providing concrete and accurate dates and letting the viewer decide what is true and what is not. That being said, the information presented is subjective and is derived from my interpretation of an otherwise extremely cryptic and hard to decipher game, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. While the way I have begun the discussion through omission of the game's lore past its opening and comparison with the popular and monumental epic that is the Divine Comedy might seem odd at first, I have a clear reason for it, and that is the fact I'm inclined to believe the creator of Golden Light, Mr. Pink, wrote and thought out the story to be a direct parallel to Dante's Inferno. Allow me to provide substantial evidence to back up my point. Past its surface level damsel in distress complex that is essentially the same in both works, there is one more similarity which might not be apparent at the beginning without being directly familiar with the source material of both, and that is the layers of or levels of each work. Although there are a lot of works in fiction which display the trope of someone's partner being dragged to hell, like the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, a lot of what elevates the work of Dante's Inferno as being its definitive base for Golden Light is the symbolism portrayed within these so-called layers or levels of the game. In Dante's Inferno, hell is split into 9 layers, each representing one of the cardinal sins. And as the story progresses, we witness Dante and Virgil get deeper and deeper into them while encountering lost souls. Similarly, in Golden Light we descend deeper and deeper into the mid layers, and by the end of the game we end up exploring 9 unique areas. This may seem unintentional at first, but a few of the levels actually bear uncanny resemblance to the ones from the Divine Comedy, at least in terms of theming and references. My wish for describing these levels and paralleling them with their respective layers is not to bore the player or the viewer or anybody watching this, or even undermine the viewing experience. So I'll try to make each edition as detailed as possible, including in-game descriptions for every single one of them and expanding on the gameplay factor where I feel it is necessary. Let's begin. The first layer from Dante's Inferno is named Limbo, representing the home to the unbaptized and virtuous pagans. It's not heaven, but it's as far as hell goes. It's a place of almost non-existent suffering, more in line with having a perpetually bad day than being stuck in eternal torment. The way it's presented inside Dante's Inferno makes it seem almost like a lobby or waiting room of hell. The direct paralleling game to that is the Eternal Field. The Eternal Field is full of meat followers and other beings of meat that don't altogether appear malevolent. Even the mushrooms have an agency of their own, as they only attack you if you come upon their territory. It is at its core a place suspended between life and death. There's also a lot of, well, landmarks, if I were to call them so. Most of them range from outright strange NPC encounters to shortcuts and other similar buildings that are either story important or not as much. This place resembles an altered version of the location where the picnic between you and her happened in the beginning of the game. I might need to add as well that this is the only level in the game that is truly static, as it does not employ any random generation, making it quite easy to navigate and provide an almost stuck in time or out of reach touch from the other layers. It's also probably the largest map in this game, featuring a ton of places where you'll be coming back after every run. Your main means of transportation inside the Eternal Field is by using a bike called Snout, which can also play music using a radio attached to it. Snout is a living being which we know from dialogue has been to the depths of the gut before. Not much else is known about it except what I've mentioned. We can also meet an entity named the Sun, which may appear to be a reference to two things. It's a giant baby-like head in appearance that indicates themes of loss or even abortion. The way it stares at you in this content appears oddly similar to the way Rey's head appears in the movie End of Evangelion. Its name is also a play on words, being a literal golden sun stuck in the ground. Even Snout points out the fact that the heat of the sun gives off is unbearable. His presence might also have something to do with the existence of this universe's version of Icarus. There are a lot of other entities hidden among this realm, none really more important or less important than the others around them. Tortured souls stuck in limbo. Although a few of them do appear to have a fallen hero eerie vibe to them, like the aforementioned Icarus, which is fallen on top of a hill, hanging with the sword of Castle, one of the game's bosses, penetrating to his heart. There's a pianist named Val who is tortured by a parasite called Royale into always playing the piano. The parasite resides on top of the piano, constantly throwing ants at him. Killing the parasite turns Royale into a dealer who sells you keys to locked gates inside the Eternal Field. He's one of my favorite looking NPCs, at least design wise, and I love the way his voice lines are short melodic chords played on the piano. The second layer is called Lust, and of course in the Divine Comedy this layer is dedicated to those who were overcome by sexual temptation during their life. In the game this takes the form of a level named the Gut Corridors. Here we learn a variety of things about not only the main character but also their loved ones. Through the strange distorted dialogue spewed out by the voice, or better known at this point as what appears to be the entity that forms the walls in every single being, named the Gut. The Gut at first affirms the fact that the main character is a writer through the following lines.
There was already a writer inside here, back then he changed his profession. The former writer tried to make up music.
Upon reaching the third floor, the player encounters the game's first boss, named Carrie. This is the point in which the area is at last cemented as being Lust's equivalent. Not only is it hinted through early cutscenes that this place is the last layer, but now we get a concrete line from the Gut mentioning it. This is hinted at even during the other floors of this chapter, through different lines said by the Gut.
Mind if I ask, when was the last time you hugged someone with all your heart?
As you walk through the dark and scramble while tightly holding your axe, you hear an ominous voice say, Dante come across Francesca da Rimini, who married the deformed Giovanni Malatesta for political purposes, but fell in love with his younger brother Paolo Malatesta. The two began to carry on an adulterous affair sometime between 1283 and 1286. Giovanni surprised them together in Francesca's bedroom and violently stabbed them both to death. Francesca explains.
Love, which in gentlest hearts will soonest bloom, seized my lover with passion for that sweet body from which I was torn unshivered to my doom. Love, which permits no loved one not to love, took me so strongly with delight in him, that we are one in hell as we were above. Love led us to one death. In the depths of hell, Caina waits for him who took our lives. This was the piteous tale they stopped to tell.
When early Watchtower teachings that the world entered the so-called time of the end in 1799, that Jesus returned invisibly in 1874, and that the world would end in 1914.
And God tied their bodies together forever. Both lovers, stuck in a frivolous frenzy, cried for air, but they couldn't.
Rusted and malformed pipes line the dirty tiled walls while strange devices fill the air with mechanical whirring. Welcome to the Meat Factory, or better known as the Gluttony Circle, the mass-produced area where the insatiable hunger of the meat is satiated. Within the Gluttony Circle, the player confronts a nightmarish realm of industrialized consumption and grotesque excess. Rusted and malformed pipes line the dirty tiled walls while strange devices emit mechanical whirring, echoing the relentless machinery at work. Meat Factory, a twisted and distorted reflection of humanity's gluttonous tendencies, represents the embodiment of the sin of gluttony. It serves as a macabre manifestation of the insidious desires and voracious appetites that plague the human psyche. Here the player is confronted with a grotesque spectacle, witnessing the consequences of unbridled indulgence. By combining the meat-filled environments with the industrial side, a very memorable image is created inside the player's mind. Beyond the similarities, there aren't any incriminating lines of dialogue said within this zone. It is a place filled with creatures called condemned, which are tall, black humanoids that may or may not wear machinery on their head. The boss of this area is quite interesting, not so much in appearance or the way he works mechanically, but because while he is in your proximity, you can clearly hear audio from the 1968 movie Night of the Living Dead from a TV broadcast inside the movie at the 55-minute mark. Going down to layer 4, we reach Greed, or in this game, cages. Now, while the cages don't have any significant evidence of greed present in their zone, they've symbolically been denoting this throughout history for as long as they've existed. Cages as a symbolic element can be associated with greed due to their representation of confinement, control, and the relentless desire to possess and hoard. Beyond its torture chamber-like appearance with industrialized furnaces, I'm also inclined to believe that this layer represents the materialist nature of these asylums. That is portrayed more in line with the need for control. Cages implied ownership and authority of what is controlled within them. In the context of greed, this represents the overwhelming desire to inherit power and dominate resources, assets, or even other individuals. Greed seeks to possess and exert dominance over material wealth or power, often at the expense of others' well-being and autonomy. In terms of actual story-related bits, this area is relatively weaker compared to the other zones, lacking a lot of the detailed monologues which made those more engaging in the first place. Moving on to the following layer, we arrive at the back streets. Among the labyrinth of streets lays a story of grief and loss of oneself. The back streets represent anger, street brutality, or instigation. Through their sheer existence, they tie directly into the wrath layer. This zone has a lot of themes related to that, from the presence of enemies called meat cops to the way the neon lights change colors to that of a siren. But perhaps its more important aspect beyond the symbolism that ties it directly to the rest of Dante's Inferno, like the rest of the layers, is the story the god tells you upon reaching the second floor of this zone. At first, the god hints about there not being a story, but after starting to collect the keys, it recalls a quite dark tale.
Okay, I'll tell you about our God. Our God was a rather sweet fellow. He sat in his room all the time, just like you. I don't have any proof, of course. At least it's a beautiful story. And one day he came up with the idea of touching himself. You really liked it. Our God always loved to come up with something new. Ideas, stories, anything as long as it's interesting. At first it looked like a distant prank, but then it turned into an uncontrollable fixation. Now, it was the only thing he's been doing. Finally, one day he touched himself, and this created fire suddenly died out forever. And the last spark of his dying talent burned into a golden light that was sweet of all his ideas. This everything.
The person, the writer, the drunkard, he burned himself. It is indicated that the writer set himself on fire at one point, having gone out with the golden light from his crackling corpse. Not only that, but also the cigarette burn memento also suggests that the burns weren't exactly as severe as they appeared, but were self-harm burns. This all pales, however, under the guise of the theme of corrupted love, which protrudes the whole narrative. As we advance deeper, the story starts cracking. A story of a couple who weren't exactly that fond of one another starts appearing in the foreground. I don't believe the creator, or God as they refer to him, is the same person as the player, at least not in a literal sense. I find this very odd, but their connection appears quite uncanny. They both are writers who have had their lives ruined by love. Considering the insinuations that the mementos are our lost memories, it would make perfect sense why the god loves the main character despite the obvious shortcomings and evil nature of him towards the god. So, who created the god and everything else? Despite the god's attempt to convince the player that whatever's happening is not a metaphor, I firmly believe that all that we are seeing in front of our eyes is one of the nightmares of our main character. One psychotic and severely traumatic event which caused him to retreat and become essentially a hermit. There's also a lot left to be interpreted, and I think that up to a certain point we can see even she as being part of the collective unconsciousness that is the God, with some of her thoughts coming through the player in a disquietingly close manner to the manipulative way of speaking that her character employs throughout the game.
Get him, darling. When was the last time you hugged someone with all your heart? Hey, don't rush. Stay here.
Although these claims have no base and can also be attributed to the fact the God is messing with you or trying to get inside your head, what I subsequently subtract from this is the following. These ramblings are not made by she, but directly by the God. I'm inclined to believe that substantial evidence later in the analysis provides a very good explanation for all of the story happenings, at least to the ability of my powers, which relate directly to this event here. For now, let's continue focusing on the layer section. Following up this lore-filled succulent layer follows the Midwoods, an area that can be accessed within the snow region of the Eternal Field. Midwoods is mainly composed of the cabin and the snowfields. It is the first biome to introduce bone chill as a permanent status effect. We've arrived at the Heresy circle, where the cold represents the resentment towards religion and equates to a logical fallacy in the case of the story. In some religious or ideological traditions, heresy is considered a deviation from accepted beliefs or doctrines. It is seen as a departure from the established truths or teachings of religious or ideological authority. Coldness, on the other hand, is often associated with emptiness, absence of warmth, and lack of vitality. So the metaphorical connection might be drawn based on the idea that heresy represents a spiritual or intellectual emptiness or deviation from the true path, much like the absence of warmth in coldness. The campfires might also suggest the presence of the sinner inside the chamber of fire from the heresy circle. Mechanically speaking, Midwoods is a bit stranger than other biomes or areas due to the fact Bone Shiver is permanent. It forces the player to prioritize staying warm by lighting up bonfires whenever possible, adding another layer of difficulty. That's however where its relevance starts and ends. Apart from that, this area is just a regular level without any deep story implications. The layer right after this one is the Violence layer, which is represented by an area called the Reds in Golden Light. The Reds are in close resemblance to either an art gallery or a theater set. This is due to the large presence of artwork scattered throughout the biome, along with the red leather seats, green ottomans and couches. As such, the Reds creates a posh ambience in the game. Furthermore, the statue of Venus, the red curtains, the furniture and the two-toned floor tiles are strikingly similar to the decor of the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks, which this area may be a reference to. This too doesn't have much significance past its correlation to lore elements, unfortunately. As such, we are left with the last two layers, Fraud and Treachery. I'm quite conflicted, mostly due to the fact both are quite severe and mean similar things, although of different intensities. Due to this fact, I cannot decide which representation is taken by the library or the insides. I'm going to try, however, to paraphrase it, put logical arguments forward, and while this may not satiate my indecisiveness on the matter, it may provide you with a proper answer, which you may find useful. The concept of fraud signifies intentional deception, manipulation, and the perversion of truth. It encompasses acts of deceit, trickery, and the exploitation of truth for personal gain. In the context of Golden Light, the library may be seen as a symbolic manifestation of fraud, a realm where knowledge is distorted, obscured, or misused for nefarious purposes. Here, the pursuit of truth becomes entangled in a web of deceit and intellectual manipulation. On the other hand, treachery denotes the ultimate betrayal, often involving acts of disloyalty, betrayal of trust, and backstabbing. It represents a more intense form of betrayal, often associated with deeply personal relationships or larger scale betrayals, principles or causes. In Golden Light, the insides could potentially embody the essence of treachery, serving as a realm of profound betrayal where allegiances are shattered and moral boundaries are crossed. The dilemma arises from the fact that fraud and treachery share overlapping elements, and the intensity of betrayal varies within these layers. While my analysis may not provide a definitive answer to the question, it offers a logical framework and presents arguments that can contribute to the ongoing discussion. But you wish this to be final, don't you? So the evidence provided as mentioned by the case above is simply that of the insides being treachery and the library being fraud. The only issues with that is the in-game evidence. The library is deeper in the gut than the insides. One possible interpretation is that the placement of the library deeper within the gut signifies a hidden layer of treachery, an underlying deceit that is concealed beneath the surface. This could suggest that the true essence of treachery lies not in an overt act of betrayal, but in the subtle manipulation and perversion of knowledge found within the library. You may at this point say,
Luca, what the fuck are you even rambling about? Who even cares about any of this shit?
at which point I'd say, well, I do, and I've decided that the library is the treachery layer, okay? I'm done. Jokes aside, the insides are fraud, the illusion of surroundings as the myth concealed itself until that point, and the library is treachery, due to the way knowledge is perceived in the media as a backstabbing or betrayal of the senses under the guise of escapism. Do you understand that? Is that clear now? Is that clear for everybody? So, we're at the end of the game at this point, but before even exploring the endings, I'd like to go through a character synopsis that includes most NPCs and their relation to one another. I do hope by doing this we can get a proper grasp of the entire lore, mostly because there's been one character I've been omitting until this point, one that some of the Golden Light folks might not have forgotten about, and that is Rose. Rose is one of the only characters in the game except she who appears to be humanoid. She's presumably another survivor of the god who fell into the hole and began experimenting and trying to understand it better than anyone had previously done. But in the end, she lost herself to the madness. Rose is a seemingly ordinary young woman with chin-length red hair that adds a vibrant touch to her appearance. She is often seen wearing a red striking skirt or dress, which stands out amidst the eerie and unsettling backdrop of the eternal field. An intriguing detail about Rose is her choice to go barefoot, perhaps symbolizing a connection to the primal and untamed aspects of the game's world. Her name could also be juxtaposed with the idea of the flower rose, ingrained in the game's narrative deeply through symbolism, from the large open fields of roses to the way the flower symbolizes a rite of passage and even appears in the game's opening. However, the woman that takes the name of the flower has an interesting quirk to her personality and appearance. She is not static, as the influence of the god occasionally distorts her physical form, making her appearance in strange distortions of reality at times. And she may appear to be melting, evoking a sense of decay and vulnerability. On other occasions, her transformations take a more surreal turn, manifesting as having an excessive amount of legs. These ever-changing appearances serve as visual representations of the relentless influence and struggle she faces within the game. Rose plays a pivotal role in the player's journey, appearing in various locations within the Eternal Field after completing the corridors. Her encounters with the players are accompanied by cryptic advice hinting at her past and her personal battles with the god. Notably, Rose's appearance aligns with each dungeon except for the inside and the library, suggesting a connection to specific areas of significance. Within the depths of the god itself, players may stumble upon Rose sitting in contemplation. During these encounters, she reflects on the idea of giving up, providing a somber glimpse into her own internal struggle and the toll that the god takes on her. During Rose's first appearance at the entrance to the corridors, she stands defiantly aiming her revolver at the player, initially refusing them entry. However, she eventually relents and advises the player to seek out the factory. Following the theory that what is happening is either a story or a dream or even a deeply ingrained metaphor, Rose presents the image of an essential metaphysical character that defies common logic under the guise of the main character's mental health. Rose could represent the player's inner voice or consciousness, offering guidance and cryptic advice as the player navigates the challenges and choices within the game. She may serve as the reflection of the player's own thoughts, or she may be this universe's Virgil. She could, on the one hand, also represent the struggle of fears and the declining mental health of the player. Rose could embody the player's subconscious desires, fears, or unresolved emotions that manifest within the game world. Her ever-changing appearance and enigmatic dialogue may mirror the complex and shifting nature of the player's own subconscious thoughts and conflicts. I'm not sure exactly what any of her actions mean in the grand scheme of things, but through adversity she represents the player's resilience and mental fortitude in the face of danger. Her struggle with the god and her perseverance, despite its influence, could parallel the player's own battles with inner demons, highlighting the importance of resilience and determination. It's also important to note that Rose had her own spin-off in the Golden Light franchise at one point, featuring an all-new level that was love and rose themed. And at this point you may ask, how does this fit into the Ninth Circle of Hell theory? Well, it's rather simple. Weirdly enough, the game got unlisted, while not corresponding with any particular event at first relates to a real life happening. In 2012, a group of archaeologists found in Ravenna, Italy, a lost canto of Dante's Inferno, what appears to be the 10th circle of hell. The 9th circle was previously understood to be the lowest point of hell reached by Dante and his guide Virgil before ascending on their journey towards paradise. As such, the unlisted game corresponds with the 10th circle of hell through what I'm guessing is just pure coincidence. In summary, Rose in Golden Light represents the player's inner voice, in my opinion. She's his subconscious thoughts, fears, and resilience. His wish for exploration of identity. She just isn't there. She isn't real, nor is anything from the interaction truly real in the sense that you and I are. That's why I've been blabbering my words for the last few minutes. I'm not sure what's happening. Am I real? Is any of this real? Everything is presented through an individual that is truly tormented by his past actions. Maybe we are the same. When my chair just squeaks, I'm tormented by the fact I cannot remove that in post, however hard I try, because I don't have the skills to do so. Whenever I have to re-record a line, it all goes south, and yet I still show my human side, because that's what propels me forward. That's what Rose is supposed to represent. Relentlessness, the ability to overpass and keep fighting even in the face of adversity. Everything and nothing, all at once. From Val's torture of endlessly playing the piano, suggesting a deeper connection to the music part of the game, to the god mentioning these weird things, your character may as well be the writer who changed his profession, and it's through this insight that we see the cracks in his mind start showing, and the cracks in the story. Icarus, a fallen angel from the sky, stabbed through the heart. The underlying themes of lust show the broken psyche of a sad and lonely person. Another perhaps terribly important. Lloyd, the bartender. He only appears in the preset for level generation called room 207. 217? 417? This being is a straight reference to a movie and book, The Shining, where the room represents the resting place of a popular actress's soul, her existence suspended in limbo as her mistakes from her previous life tie her to endlessly haunt the bathroom, where she slit her wrists, killing herself. She had been known to be a woman who seduced men and brought them into her room for sexual activities. This might pose an interesting parallel, yet again, related to the theme of
In
love.
The Shining,
Jack
Jack
Torrance is assigned as a new caretaker for the Overlook Hotel. The reasoning behind his choice stems from the book he was writing. By incorporating elements of The Shining, Golden Light explores the themes of love, seduction, and enduring power to finish the book he was writing. By incorporating elements of The Shining, Golden Light explores the themes of love, seduction, and enduring power of past actions. His desire to rebuild his life and reconnect with Lloyd and the two characters pushed around by demonic entities.
In The Shining,
to write
Jack
the psychological
Torrance
and
as
of
a
the game,
caretaker
while
for
also
the Overlook
providing
Hotel.
parallels to be drawn
reasoning
into The Shining as well, being a barman, which ends up reverting Jack back to his old ways. In the same way, we can notice in the game's narrative the protagonist's regression.
What is human? Why does anything make
sense?
There's no reason like this should be here. There's no reason that it's not there. That's part of the divine comedy. That's hours of my life being shared. There's nothing that's going to push me forward.
It has a logic, but it has a logic to oneself. It's like a painting I'm viewing from the outside. Like a piece of art, like something. It has hellish. We've established so far that Golden Light is a game with heavy hellish themes, inspired by Dante's Inferno. A game which also takes a lot of inspiration from the narratives of Silent Hill and The Shining, while showing us a love story gone bad and a person reverting back to their old self. But is it a love story truly? There are so many layers to this that at the end of everything, a lot of the narrative consistency is lost even through the solid storytelling Mr. Ping employed. Even in the form of She's character arc, it's not presented exactly clear what she is supposed to be for us, the players. What does it mean? Are we supposed to interpret this directly or not? Have I done the mistake? Have I wasted my
And then I had to record
hours
with this shitty mic that
in
kept
a day
bumping and doing that
thinking
thing where
this
like
too
I don't
deeply
have a
in?
pop filter. I don't
No,
have the money
I
for a pop
couldn't.
filter. Why
Is it a
am I doing this?
true love story? I'm not sure. If you don't kill a single enemy, the journal log states, "In that dream I slept in mother's hugs." The ending, respective for the pacifist route, sees you sleeping in she's arms. There used to be a theory that she is your mom due to the way this ending is structured and the birthday cake cutscene, but I highly doubt that your character has an Oedipus concept, taking into account you to live in different lives, you engage in sexual activities with her. So scratch the whole idea the AMC might have a weird mommy king, but definitely not an incestuous guy. One important aspect is how you end each ending. You end the endings by writing them. The game asks you to literally write the end of the game. Endings depend on the number of bosses and enemies you kill, as I said earlier. The endings at this point take two paths. The neutral ending is, well, something I have no clue if I can show on YouTube. If you don't kill all the bosses, you get to the end of the game where she and the man she's been cheating on you with are having and have become malformed and melted together, now boasting the title of they. When interacting with them, you will be prompted with a line that says,
I cannot understand. Was I too late? Was I not trying hard enough to get her back? One thing is clear. I paid enough for whatever I've done. But all this suffering only led to more suffering. At the end of a journey, a man shall change, they say. I feel like I'm still the same. No knowledge of what to do. No knowledge of what to want. No bloody wrath. No humble forgiveness. I am neither here nor there.
husk of a person, suggesting the paradoxical and ironic nature of the relationship. The characters are physically merged but emotionally distant, forever trapped in a twisted and bonded of betrayal and suffering, where words slur and become nothingness in hell, just like Francesca and Paolo. Disillusionment and the harsh realities of relationships distance in a world filled with plague and death, where love cannot shine through the cracks. Death of an outsider trying to understand what it means to be loved. The other ways of the balance present. You come and kill both.
I finally figured out how everything works. You either keep fighting, hoping to keep the beast inside, or you give up. In any case, you will suffer. You indulge in pleasure, then writhe in shame and regret, or you gnaw off your hands just to not reach for the forbidden fruit. The only difference is that giving up fighting is easier.
What could it mean? Having killed both of you end up essentially becoming a monster because of your powerful wish to change. There is however one more ending where you get turned into a dog, but I seriously failed to see its relevance plot-wise, unless comparing the main character with a dog would signify something I'm missing. It could be the theme of transmutation. The transformation into a dog represents a loss of humanity, identity and autonomy. Or maybe draws striking parallels to the case of Gregor Samsa in the Metamorphosis. But I'd like to disregard that just because it's quite literally reaching at that point. That's it. That is it. It's not reaching. It's something deeper, more powerful and
Silence
ingrained.
proves the last typing sound
to.
as the typewriter echoes each ending. We get to peek inside the troubled person's mind, but then again, what is a metaphor and what isn't? The world of Golden Light? In this deeply troubled Lovecraftian experience, we may as well be experiencing the hell of Dante's Inferno in a physical way, or cry through the thoughts of death, flooding the memory of our character's last dying breaths. Like a dementia patient, he goes through every single emotion and eventually loses himself to his own story, forever locking himself inside the cave of nothingness as to never create again. This is Golden Light. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe. This was probably one of my hardest projects to work on, and I'd like to thank everybody who participated in creating this video. You're all amazing people, and I also want to thank Mr. Pink for creating Golden Light. It's been a pleasure being here, but my brain really doesn't like long videos apparently. Like, this was a hassle to work on them. Like, few months, like a lot of work went into this, and now I'm reading this completely off script, so I'm being a bit more authentic. Anyways, I've been Luca, and I'll see you next time. Bye!